Everyone, welcome to Dome Talk. I'm Aaron Moran, and I will be moderating this talk and posting helpful links in chat. We will focus on the questions that came in before the meeting, and then we'll do our best to get to any questions that you ask in chat. We try to stick to 1 hour, but we typically go over, so yeah, no hard feelings if you have to leave early, of course. Yeah, for those of you who haven't been here before, I'll start with a short intro about who we are. Natural Spaces Domes is owned and operated by Dennis Johnson and Tessa Hill. Located in North Branch, Minnesota, we have a dome complex consisting of an office dome, 3 model dome homes, a screen porch dome, 2 workshop domes, and the mini dome, which is our option for a small living space. I think a competitor, it's like a tiny home, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And as always, we invite you to visit us for in-person tours because you really can't believe it till you see it. Natural Spaces Domes are special because they're designed to be easy to build, beautiful, healthy, energy efficient living spaces while still providing you the best housing value around. Our staff consists of 14 people with Dennis, Tessa, and Derek leading the organization. Dennis is the dome guru. He has decades of experience as a designer, contractor, builder. Having designed over 1,200 domes worldwide, he knows what works and what doesn't. His patented dome connector system is the best available, and he sees to it that someone is there to help you with every step of your dome dream. And next, we have our project manager, Derek Miller. He joined the NSD team several years ago, bringing with him a lifetime of construction experience. He handles a wide variety of responsibilities, from collaborating with Dennis on projects and client contact to helping the shops refine building techniques. While he's deeply familiar with dome construction from the ground up, he's also our video guy, creating and filming the educational videos, virtual classes, tours, etc. So if you see any of those things up, that was probably him behind the camera. Derek, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. We won't have the guru with us tonight. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with some scheduling conflicts, but we're going to do our best to see if we can answer all the questions that have come in. And we also had a few fun pictures we just thought we'd share with everybody about a couple late domes. Aaron and myself, had the opportunity to spend a little time helping some people that are trying to squeeze in a couple of dome raisings right before the winter. So in fact, Aaron, I don't know, that might even be good. You want to start with some of those pictures? We can kind of, that way, if there's anybody coming in late, we can kind of buy them a few more minutes and just show some fun dome pictures possibly, if anybody's interested in that. So
dome pictures. Who's interested in that? I don't know.
Right. All right. So here's a dome. This is in Minnesota. And this is a 3-frequency, high profile, 38-foot diameter dome. And we started putting this up as a little after noon, I think, because they were doing some excavating work when we first got there. So I think it was a little afternoon, and at this point in time in Minnesota, this right before winter, was getting dark at about 5 or so. So we only had a few hours to get going on it. We kind of got right up towards the top when we ran out of light, but so yeah. Here's Aaron up on the scaffolding. Here's us out of light. Oh,
I'll have 2 pictures really quick.
Okay, this is okay. Here we are back at the St. Cloud project. So this is in Minnesota again. So yeah, you can scan past this one if you want, Aaron.
See.
This gets us into a South Dakota dome, which we did right before the last dome we showed you.
Actually, I think the one you're referring to here was actually our South Dakota dome. You know, what's
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
We started out at the South Dakota dome. You're correct. So sorry, I kind of was thinking you had it in that one other order, but yeah, this is South Dakota dome here. So you can see we got a few sections of scaffolding. This is a 49-foot 4-frequency. I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have similar looking background, I guess. So 49-foot 4-frequency dome. So this is the same as Bear Creek Dome for any of those that are familiar with the website. That's on the home page. Dennis Johnson, his wife Tessa, that's their home. And so and now Let's see. Now we're back. This
I
is a
only
St. Cloud. It kind of got mixed up. So
oh,
this is
St.
back.
Cloud one? My
Yeah,
mistake.
this is back in St. Cloud again. So
Okay.
Aaron's trying to challenge me. So,
Okay, I
uh,
think this is South Dakota.
okay. Yep. So there's a garage dome. So this is a double dome complex. Um, so we're taking a picture from towards the top of the one dome, looking down on the garage dome. This is a 3 frequency, 36-foot low profile. And it has, I believe, an 18-foot wide garage door on the right-hand side of this photo. And then I want to say a 9-foot wide garage door opening on the left-hand side of the photo. To be able to pull a pontoon through there is the goal. Um, so yeah, kind of a couple creative shots. This is actually one picture. It looks like two, but it's actually one picture from the top of the dome looking down to the other one. So
And you can see our hub and spoke, or our hub system, and the way it connects really close up there. You just
yeah,
power these in. Let's see. I think this was a picture, yep, more a little bit more daylight from the inside of the larger dome, looking out towards the garage. So it's kind of the same picture, but little bit better lighting there. Uh,
yeah. We did this over the course of 2 days. We did a permanent wood foundation system at this dome. So this is the foundation for it. So we kind of were last minute trying to get these pictures loaded before Dome Talk. So Aaron did a great job even being able to get them on here, but they're a little bit out of order from what we normally do. But this is the foundation for the project we were just showing you in South Dakota. So yeah. And there it is, basically done. They're gonna have a cupola, so that top pentagon is gonna stay open for the cupola, and you can see the garage dome in the background. And yeah, that's kind of there you go. There's both domes done. So that was that the second day then, Aaron, I believe? We got to that, or no, we started putting plywood on, I think, the morning of the third day. So both
mhm.
domes were up, and then we came back the next morning and we started putting some plywood on. So this would have been the third day of the project. So you can see the size of that garage door opening on the front of that dome. It's actually a 3 riser wall extension opening, where your standard riser wall extension opening is 2 risers. So it's a little bit wider than normal to accommodate a large garage door. In fact, that might even be a 20-foot instead of 18-foot garage door right there. But Dennis usually puts them in a little bit bigger than your standard 16 feet, or your 8-foot wide garage doors usually opts to go with a 9 or 18 feet just to give a little more room to get in and out of the garage. So, okay.
So here's
Well,
the St. Cloud one.
here,
So here's the pictures from
here's the St. Cloud Dome. So you can see the excavating equipment in the back. So we didn't get it started till after lunchtime here because they were finishing filling in a big trench that they had, kind of impeding us from even getting to the dome in the first place. So we didn't really start on this till about noon. This one we ran out of light on this very first day, but we got most of the dome up. So yeah, and there it is at the end of the day. As you can see, we had another row of triangles on the very top, but in other words, that was probably about 4 hours of work to get to that point on day one. So yeah, kind of a fun picture there with the lighting and everything. So, okay. Well, that was kind of just a quick, I just thought it might be fun to see a couple of projects we squeezed in right before the snow fell in South Dakota and Minnesota here. Just, I don't know. I know I always used to like to see any kind of construction photos. So even though they were last minute, we wanted to at least get that to you. So, all right. Other words, I think we're ready to jump into some questions here. If you got the list for you, Aaron, and you can jump in
Yeah.
and see if I can answer all these.
Sure. So I think our first question here is one we get pretty often, about financing, like what kind of stuff you like, who you can go through. So this was from Marilyn in Wisconsin, and she just simply asks what financing is available, and standard lenders like any other type of home, Wells Fargo, Fannie Mae, et cetera. And here's a bunch of others that these are actually, banks that people have gotten loans through for their domes. And one thing that can happen sometimes is they might talk to someone at Wells Fargo who says that they don't loan on domes or something along those lines. Well, maybe that loan officer has never done it, right? But they definitely do. We have a long list of people who have gotten loans through them. So sometimes you might have to, talk to someone a little bit higher up, or show them examples of other ones, just so they know that this is a thing. I think a lot of lenders will just see something different and go and try to be wary of it, but it's definitely a very standard thing, just like any other sort of custom home.
Right. In fact, Dennis, the owner, and his wife Tessa, I think they financed Bear Creek Dome through Wells Fargo, for example. So yeah, it's definitely doable. But like Aaron said, it depends on the loan officer, and if they look at domes as being real unique, or if they look at domes as just, another conventional house with a different shape, essentially. So yeah. I know that Dennis said he's been kind of working in the background. It's been extremely busy though, but trying to compile a list from current customers of who they finance through so that we can try to eventually get that on our website. And we've been trying to do it for the last few months, but it's just been kind of low on the priority. But we do want to show, here's a list of a couple hundred customers and here's where they got their financing, just to kind of, steer people in a little easier direction, I guess. So.
And I think the same goes for insurance too. You'll have the sort of similar situations, and yeah, it's definitely common with State Farm, et cetera. Like all the major ones, I believe, have insured domes. And then we also have, someone, a more local company, I think that.
Yeah, McNamara Insurance.
Yeah, and they are literally located in a dome, so they definitely insure domes. But yeah, same sort of situation there.
Right, right.
Okay, let's see. So next question here, we have Joshua from North Dakota. Few questions here. First is how would delivery go? And then can the dome home handle temps as low as -40 degrees? And would I have to put the house together myself, or do you offer building services?
Yeah, those are some good basic questions. I'll just do it in order, I guess. But essentially, how the delivery goes is typically once you sign a contract with us to build a home, we'll give you a timeline on when all of your product will come in. And it's usually dictated by lead times for certain products that we need to order. So right now it's anywhere, 6 to 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. It kind of depends on what you're ordering for the dome. But then essentially, once you are ready for it, we only need usually like a 1 week notice and we can ship it. And typically it's a dedicated truck, so it's however many days drive it is from Minnesota. So oftentimes, if you said we want to receive a truck on a Saturday, for instance, and you call us on a Monday, that's absolutely no problem for us to get the truck scheduled, lined up. We like a little more time than that, but we could do it that quickly and have it to you that Saturday to be unloaded. So here's just a couple of pictures of us loading up some trucks. As you can see, this particular load here is very, very full. So, and of course, when it comes to unloading, if you have equipment like we're using here, it makes it a very quick and easy job. However, many people do unload the domes simply with by hand. They'll carry the product out of there. They'll get some friends over, and usually it takes about 4 hours or so to unload a truck or less, just depending on the equipment you have with 4 people or more. So that's the delivery. And then as far as can it handle temps -40 degrees, absolutely. In fact, one thing a lot of people really like about domes is their energy efficiency, and part of that is just due to the shape of it, as well as Dennis designs them with very high R values and stuff. So cold temperatures is no big deal. In fact, on our website, we do post the energy usage at Bear Creek Dome and what it costs. And for 3,200 square foot in Minnesota, and in fact, I think this Sunday is supposed to be 12 below zero, not including windshield. It's usually $500 a year to heat it. So those stats are on there, but so they're not only able to handle 40 degrees below zero or even colder, but they're popular in the northern country just because of the energy efficiency. So Canada, for instance, we got a lot of domes up in Canada as well, and that was one of the main driving forces for those customers was the energy efficiency. And the last one is you do not have to build the home yourself. We showed you a couple of domes here earlier where Aaron and I went out and helped for a couple of days, and sometimes we can do that if it works out schedule wise and stuff, but typically most people will have a contractor that'll help them. There are some do it themselves kind of customers that will maybe have some friends and family come over for a dome raising and help get the dome up. Like Aaron and I were just showing you, it took, you know, a little over 2 days. Well, it took 2 days to do the one dome and about 4 hours or so to get the other dome almost all the way up. So, you know, it's usually a day or two to get up a dome in most cases. People that have never built before, it might take a little bit longer, or if they got a fear of heights, you know, it might take a little bit longer just getting everything situated for the pieces as they go up. But typically it's just a day or two to get the dome up. And then contractors will come in and, you know, they may have put the foundation in before you put the dome up. You may have contracted that out. You may contract some other parts. The roofing is a common one that people will contract out. But they are easy enough since you're buying a kit that a lot of do-it-yourselfers can do a lot of the dome part itself. You know, subbing out the foundation and the roofing and some other parts of it, plumbing, electrical usually. But you don't have to do any of it yourself. Some people are 100% hands off. So it really depends on you. And if you're building in an area where we've had people build recently, oftentimes we can maybe recommend a contractor who has dome experience. And it's kind of funny, like right now in North Carolina, there was a lot of domes that went up. So there's a couple guys we've been talking to, and you know, if they seem really good and we get a lot of positive feedback, we're happy to recommend them to somebody else that's building in a similar area. It's always nice to have somebody that's got 1 or 2 domes under their belt. But you don't even need to have any domes under your belt, really. So I think that kind of got that 3-parter. So,
Yeah, yeah. Unless yeah, Josh, if you have any more, if you're here, if you have any more questions on that. Yeah, cool.
yeah.
So thank you. And we'll move on to so we have Oscar in Indiana. He says, I have an older dome house that needs a triangular frame in the middle of the roof replaced. What is the proper way to do this? And for that, I guess we'll just get started here. I think we need more information about perhaps who built your dome. What kind of dome is it? Is it panelized, hub and strut? And also that can, if you have pictures of the part that needs to be worked on, then you know that goes a long way towards us being able to help you with some recommendations. Yeah, Derek, do you have anything else there?
Yeah, you know, one thing I always tell people is a dome is unique in its shape and in its performance, in wind and snow and energy and everything. So there's definitely some things that set a dome apart from a conventional home. But as far as the materials used and the construction and everything is the same as a conventional house. So in this case, if there's some damage to the roof for whatever reason, a tree branch fell on it, it had a leak in the shingles that did some rotting damage or something like that. Typically, the materials that are used in it are going to be just readily available at your big box store. And normally it's just going to be kind of standard construction, like any good contractor or carpenter, I should say, should have no problem fixing that. The reason we ask for more information is there are 2 main types of construction on domes, at least for geodesic, and one of them is panelized. And the only difference is then when the triangles come together, they're bolted. So these panels become structural elements of the dome. They bolt together in the middle. And the other main type is the type that we build here at Natural Spaces Domes, which is a hub and strut, which means there's a centerpiece and everything kind of locks into it. And that's usually like a hardware piece. And so depending on the dome, you may have to take out the whole triangle, including part of the structure, or you may just take off the panel, the exterior plywood sheeting. So it just really kind of depends. But yeah, Oscar, if you're here tonight and you want to jump in, or if you want to just send us some additional pictures, we could probably be more help to you if we knew what type of construction you had. Or like Aaron said, if you know the manufacturer, then we'll know what's going on with it or how it was built. So, but
Thanks,
I don't
Oscar.
see him in our list. Yeah. So, okay.
At least not obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
A pseudonym. Okay, so next we have Christine from Ohio. Are you offering on-site classes in 2024? Yeah, I believe we're all scheduled for both for Dome School on 2024, and we also have the dates up for 2025 as well. Yeah, I highly recommend going to Dome School. It is like, even if you just like domes and you just something that you just want to see or learn more about, They really are a great way to kind of learn how they come together and meet a bunch of cool people who also are into domes. And dome people are just really awesome people. So that's how I found out about Natural Spaces Domes, and actually how I came to start working here is attending dome school. And it's definitely worth the money. The food's great, and yeah, we just overall have a really good time.
Yeah, yeah. And even if you plan on having a contractor do all the work for you, sometimes it's nice to go to dome school just to just have a better understanding. So if you notice a contractor maybe is doing something wrong, or you can at least recognize a problem if you see one maybe. And you know, some contractors, not that they need to be micromanaged, but sometimes it's just nice to have a little bit more insight on how things should work, so that if you see them doing something a little weird, you could at least bring up the question. And of course, if that is the case and they were just confused, we're always available for consultation phone calls and stuff, of course, for anybody who's building a dome. But you know, dome school is just nice to really kind of help get a better understanding of the whole process. So
Yeah, and we've had people also bring their contractor to dome school.
absolutely, yeah. In
So
fact,
they
that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good so they get some hands-on experience. That way, when they actually get there, they're not just looking at it and yeah, with a whole bunch of questions, right?
And odds are good. It will probably whatever you would have spent on bringing them to dome school will then save you from their bids, because instead of them bidding high to make sure they're covered, once they see how simple it is to put up the dome, they're probably like, "Oh, this is a little easier than I thought," and it may save you, you know, multiple times more than that which dome school costs in the first place. So not a
Yep.
bad idea.
Cool. Thank you, Christine. So next question we have is from Jessica from Vermont. Our dome sides are plywood. We are thinking of adding vinyl siding to the outside, but I've heard that can cause moisture issues. We have just recently had the roof redone, and there were major moisture issues in there. So we're super cautious now about any new projects. Tips for siding a dome? Is it different than a regular house? And I'm assuming that Jessica, if you're here, it's is the just the straight sides of the dome. You're not trying to like put siding on like the round roof area, right? Which in that case, it shouldn't be any different than a regular house, I think, Derek.
Right, right. No, like I kind of mentioned earlier, domes essentially are the same as conventional houses as far as the material used. So there is no problem using vinyl siding. As far as moisture issues, my assumption, without knowing 100% sure, is that it's a condensation related, more water vapor than maybe liquid water. But normally you're going to have a conventional house, or the dome vertical walls that Aaron was referring to will be wrapped with what they typically call like a house wrap. Like Tyvek is one of the brands that do that. And that kind of it does a couple things, but it's another layer of protection behind your siding. And that kind of, you know, allows you to put on like cedar siding, steel, aluminum, vinyl. If you want to do stone siding, that's also an option on domes. It gets a little bit more complicated than just house wrap. You got to have some cement board, other things. But there's all kinds of siding options, even stucco. Depending on where you live, you can do stucco. So basically, if you've seen siding on any conventional house, you can put that siding on a dome home. Absolutely no problems there. And then as far as the roof goes, you know, I always tell people dome roofs, you know, they're not more complicated than a regular roof. It looks like it because there's a lot of cutting. They're a lot more labor intensive to install them, but they're very simple as far as what you do. So if they're shingled correctly, you should never have any kind of leak issue. So if this condensation, it makes me wonder if it's a ventilated dome shell where it allows air to circulate underneath the plywood and exhaust out, almost like a conventional house that was ventilated, or if it's a hot roof and maybe there's some leakage on the inside of water vapor getting through and condensing on the underside of the dome. I'm not really sure what the water problem is, but conventional roofing techniques and conventional siding techniques are what pretty much almost 99, I would say 99 point like 5% of all dome home owners use conventional roofing and siding with absolutely no problems with it. So it shouldn't be, vinyl should not be a concern for you. You will want house wrap on before you put the vinyl, but it should be no problem. So. Yeah.
Looks like, yeah, just said that that is what the correct question was. It was the flat sides. So, yeah, thank you, Jess, for the question. So next we have Edmund in Washington. This looks like he has a lot in Snohomish County in Washington State, which is just north of Seattle, and is planning to do a 52-foot dome with 12-inch insulation and a 10-foot high ICF basement. Do you know any contractors in that area that can do domes with ICFs? Yeah, do we know anyone who has constructed there?
Yeah, there's a lot of domes in Washington, but off the top of my head, at least recently, and contractors, if it's been more than 10 years, you're never sure if they're there, but I can't think of any that have done ICFs. So no, I guess I don't have a recommendation off the top of my head for that. Yeah, there are a lot of domes there, so there's going to be, and again, I'll go back to that conventional home again as a comparison, that the ICF foundation for a dome is going to be identically built to an ICF foundation for a dome. The only difference is, as you can see here, you'll have a few more corners, but another advantage to the dome shape is these walls become very strong. If you think of them almost like the Hoover Dam or something, you can think of it as it's the curvature of the shape really holds back the earth. So it's a little more forgiving than like a big straight wall trying to hold back, several tons of soil and pressure pushing against it. So any good person with ICF should have no problem with the dome. It may cost a little bit more because, as you can see, there's a lot more corners than maybe if it was just a box house or something. But the materials are all going to cost the same, so just be a little bit more labor, which is not a very big percentage of an ICF foundation. The labor's a small percentage of it, so it shouldn't be that much more overall. But yeah, anybody who's good with ICF should have absolutely no problem on a dome. So.
And then this next question he had was, do you have a list of what qualifies for the federal 30% tax credit for this kind of project? And we're assuming that referring to tax credits you get for energy efficiency, which, just with some quick Googling, we found just the EnergyStar.gov site, which has various things that you get. You can get rebates on, but noticing that really only this bottom section here, it will work for applies for newly constructed homes. So most of these rebates here are for improvements, and likely because they want to get people with really old equipment to upgrade to newer stuff. So that was just what we found there. Also know that states a lot of times have their own tax incentives and rebates and such that you can get. Sometimes even like your power company will give you some things for installing new or rather than upgrades. But yeah, those vary so much from place to place. I'll go ahead and put these links in chat for anyone who's curious. I also found this database of state incentives. Not sure how up to date this is, but they seem to list a lot of programs just based on your state, and that might be helpful to get you started.
Yeah, the big one is definitely, like Aaron said, it's going to be the solar, wind, energy storage, as far as like batteries and stuff. But yeah, sadly for new builds, there's not a whole lot of incentives, because the new builds, if they are building to code, are already going to be fairly energy efficient right out the gate, versus homes that were built in the 50s that just, they just bleed energy like crazy, some of those places. So cool.
Yep. And his third question was, any recommendations for a heating system?
Yeah, it's really, so he's in a cooler area in Washington. It's not real cold, not like Minnesota. So heat pumps used to be the ideal solution for an energy efficient heating or cooling device, and they were limited to real cold areas, because not that long ago they were good to about 30 or 20 degrees, and if you live somewhere that got below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, like it happens pretty frequently in Minnesota, for instance, in the winter, they really struggled. So you almost had to have a backup heat source. However, now they've gotten much better in the last few years. So a lot of these are rated to 15 below 0 Fahrenheit, 20 below 0 Fahrenheit. So if you're somewhere where you're 0 or above most of the year, you really can just get by with a heat pump, in which case, they say 300% to 400% efficiency, which sounds goofy because you can be out of your 400% efficiency. And really what they mean is if you use 100,000 BTUs of electricity, they produce 400,000 BTUs of heat. So that's kind of how they're doing that when you see the 300 to 400% efficiency, but they're very good. And you can use those for in-floor heat if you want to do radiant floor system. You can use them for air handling systems if you wanted to do, duct work, and they work in all scenarios. So you can kind of utilize them for everything. But that would be my recommendation if I were to build a house in an area that wasn't absolutely frigid, like maybe in Canada somewhere. If a heat pump was the option, that would be the way to go. And unfortunately, it doesn't qualify, which I kind of assumed it would have for new builds for any kind of rebates. But if you're looking to upgrade, that's one of the things that was on that list Aaron had for, I think you get like up to $1,200 possibly back for a heat pump upgrade, which is pretty significant. It probably covers the extra cost compared to a unit that's less efficient. So,
Okay. Yep, that was all the questions from Ed. Thanks very much. So moving on, we have Michael from California. He said, I would like to hear more about ignition-proof coating on domes. His parcel is building has a parcel for building in a high fire zone in California, known as an SRA, a state responsibility area, and consequently has stricter regulations related to fire. Using hardening, i.e. ignition-proof building materials, is critical to his strategy on getting his permit to build. Yeah, definitely we have some pictures we show pretty often for an example of a house, I think in a very similar sort of situation. I believe it was a SRA area. So here is the finished dome with the cement board paneling on it. You can kind of see here we have some of the before it was finished. And I think we have another one kind of further away. As you can see, is that 4 domes in total that are connected together for this one?
It is. I think they're all 30-foot diameter domes.
Yeah, I think here's an inside, which I think the inside has been renovated since, but from what I heard. But here's sort of how you can see them connecting from dome to dome. It's kind of cool. These little portals that
yeah,
you know.
Interesting project. Yeah, and they had fire damage. In fact, I think it burned down their previous home, and so they rebuilt because they love the domes, and they rebuilt. And when they build a dome, you build it just like any other dome. And then instead of putting shingles on and stuff, what they did was a cement board. And I think that one picture you showed, Aaron, before they put the coloring on it right there, it kind of shows the cement board, which I believe was 1/2 inch thick, just attached directly to the plywood. And then they filled the joints with like a supercrete material. And there's certain design features, like you can see where the windows are. The roof has a little bit of an angle on it. So if you imagine a fire and some of the ash, hot ash and sparks kind of flying around, it can flow up and around the window instead of get caught up into a corner. So there's many design elements here. This was specifically built with the intention that if a fire ever came through again, this house would be perfectly fine. But that would be a hard solution for somewhere where I am in Minnesota, because the concrete would have a hard time with freeze and thaw cycles. However, usually that's in the fire areas, you're not dealing with too much of that. So depending on your exact climate, that would be a good option. And we show those pictures a lot because it's really the ideal solution for a fire. He really did all things, including the swimming pool, vegetation out so many feet from the dome on like a level 1 vegetation. Then there's another ring beyond that of certain vegetation. So he did the whole thing. I guess he didn't want to ever have to relive another fire problem. So yeah.
Michael, does that answer all your questions? here. But if not, yeah, thanks for the question. Okay, so we have Ian from British Columbia, Canada. Has two quick questions here. What are your thoughts on using the zip system sheathing instead of plywood for the exterior? And then the other one is in sizing a radiant floor system for the dome. I was asked what BTU to square foot per square foot of the building. Has this been calculated?
Yeah, so the first question is fairly easy. The second one is a little more complicated, but the zip system sheeting is very popular and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We use 3/4 inch tongue and groove for our exterior panels. And so we carry that 3/4 inch material down to our riser walls. We do prefer plywood over an OSB type material. It's just more forgiving if there's anything that happens to it. It absorbs and dries out if it does get wet for some reason, even during the construction phases. However, the zip panels, they have their own protective coating on them. They have a special tape that bonds that coating to help with air sealing. There's definitely advantages to them, and there's no reason you couldn't build your dome and say, I want to use zip paneling for all my vertical walls. They even make it for roofs too. But again, we have a triangle, so we want the tongue and groove, and we want 3/4 inch to span it. The zip system 5/8 inch panel technically can also make that span, but unless they have a new product, they don't, as far as I know, they don't have a tongue and groove option on that. So you'd have to use clips and some other things to get a little more complicated on the roof. And then really the coating that is on there to protect it, on a roof, you're usually gonna have some kind of underlayment under the shingles. And so it's kind of just doubling up on some of the stuff on the roof. But on the vertical walls, absolutely, especially a lot of people have additions, connecting links to a garage, all that stuff could be zip panels. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a great product. It's becoming more popular all the time. It does cost a little more too. I mean, you're paying for those coatings and for some of the stuff they're doing. So it's a little bit of a premium product, but it's a great product. So yeah, I wouldn't like say that you shouldn't use it for any reason. As far as the sizing of the radiant floor system, the reason I said it's a little more complicated is oftentimes we'll do an energy calculation sheet. Oftentimes the building department even requires them. They call them res checks, they call them energy calcs, they call, you know, a lot of people call them different things, but essentially what it does is it takes, here's the square footage of area exposed to the outside, here's the R value of that area, here's how much that area is glass, here's the U value of the glass, which is kind of the inverse of an R value, so it's a similar type determination of resistance of change in temperature. So you got to really take a lot of factors into place. What's the R value of the building? How energy efficient are your windows and doors? How many windows and doors do you have? What climate zone are you in? Are you in Hawaii? Are you in Canada? There's just a lot of variations. But one thing I will say is going back to Dennis Johnson's dome, I like to use that one a lot because it's on the homepage of our website. So most people kind of are familiar with it, at least seeing it, the inside of it. 3,200 square foot dome, and his electric boiler for his in-floor heat system is under 50,000. I mean, barely, it's like 49,000 and some BTUs. I don't remember exactly, but it's basically 50,000 BTUs for 3,200 square feet, which, you know, in a conventional house, it'd be more like 150,000 BTUs. So it's about a third of the size for that size home of what you'd find in a conventional house. It doesn't mean that he's 3 times more energy efficient, but it is a very energy efficient dome. Like I said, his heating bill is usually $500 for the year. And I wish I could say that I'm in a smaller house and my heating bill is probably about $1,500 for the year. So he does a lot better than I do, but anyway, so in that particular situation with his R value and his window grouping and all this stuff, 50,000 BTUs works in Minnesota, but it almost has to be figured out on an individual project based on where you live. Just a lot of criteria in determining that like amount, you know, necessary. So, so yeah, hopefully that answered it. And as Aaron was saying too, if anybody that we answered a question wants to jump in or if they had more questions, I think that was kind of all of our official questions. I think the holidays slowed it down a little bit. Usually we're trying to squeeze them all in and we go over by almost a half hour every time. So the fact that we're getting done a little early is kind of a new thing. So we can definitely open it up to anybody. If anybody has questions about anything we maybe brushed on, or about those dome raisings we showed in the very beginning. If anybody, or just questions in general, we got some more time if anybody else wants to ask anything, or have us elaborate on one of the questions that was asked earlier. Maybe my pacing was a little off. I'm so used to being like, go, 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 go. And then I'm like, oh, that was the last one. So
We do have one question from Ian in chat. Where can I find the dimensions, especially the height, for the various dome sizes and profiles, low, mid, and high? Off the top of my head, I actually don't know where we would show heights, because of course it depends on the diameter and then the profile. And then there's oftentimes like whether you how high your riser wall is can determine your height as well. So I don't know if we have anything that shows sort of like some kind of a base number or something like that.
yeah, if you can share your screen, Aaron, go to our homepage and I'll walk you through where to find the dome specs. And it will show the yeah, we kind of call them standards because there's really no standards. Almost everybody does something unique when they design their home. But we kind of have our standard riser wall heights. And then based on the size of the dome, we'll kind of dictate that. So if you go to, even if you just hit the dome pricing, it will bring up that dome store page. And then if you scroll down a little bit, Aaron, I think it's a little bit more here. You can see right there, dome specifications. See it on there right there. So if you click on that, it will give you some basic stuff. So here's, they show the mid, low, and high profiles. And then there's height right there towards the middle of the screen now, where it says height at center with riser. So that would be the height to the outside of the framing. So that's basically the outside of your roof. So if you were looking at that number and you were going to do like the gentleman in Washington who wants to do 12-inch thick walls for insulation, obviously that's going to bring it in a little bit, lower that, like a foot or so, but that's to the outside of the dome. All these measurements are to the outside of the dome. So yeah, I'll kind of show you it has cubic footage of volume. So if you have somebody that's trying to determine how many BTUs you need in your heating and cooling system, that's a number that might be useful to them. It shows height, it shows roof coverage, so there's your roof area. If you want to calculate what will it cost for shingles, it'll tell you how many square feet you need before calculating on, extensions and some overlap. There's some other numbers that would vary, but that's the pure number anyway of the roof. So yeah, if you just kind of scroll down there, it has a lot of basic numbers for our most popular size domes. So hopefully something like that can help. See, it even has like the first row triangle height. So if you did our standard riser at 28.5 inches for the domes where Aaron's at now, and the first triangle height was 7'8", then if 28.5 inches plus 7'8" equals this much to the top. And if you wanted your second floor to go across that seam of triangles, that's kind of helps you understand what you want for your first floor ceiling height, possibly. Not that you have to do that, but that's a common thing people will do. So most of the common numbers that people seem to want are all right there on the dome specifications, which if you just go in the dome store and scroll down a little bit, that's the easiest way to find it, I think. You might be able to search too. I don't know if the search will bring it up if you bring in the specifications. We are updating our website. And so we're hoping to kind of take care of a lot of weirdnesses that we've been having. So we're kind of in flux with our website, but we're hoping in a couple months here, we'll have a whole brand new website up and running, a little easier to navigate. But other words for now, yeah, just go to the dome store and scroll down to the specifications. So
it looks like we have some additional questions in chat here. Let's see.
I want Dennis to think we were slacking here the one time he's not with us. So
exactly. So I'm targeting for at least a half an hour over here. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Do it. David asks, after the dome frame has been raised, how long can it be safely exposed to the elements before finishing the exterior?
Typically quite a while. So the dome frame itself, there's two different types of wood involved typically, but the frame, which I'll call the structural part, is made out of Select Structural Southern Yellow Pine. And it's a very, very incredibly strong wood. In fact, it will annoy you if you put a ring shank nail in there that you have to take out because it's so dense. It's really hard to do it. It really even taxes nail guns and everything. But, so let's say you're somewhere like Arizona, you could probably leave it exposed a year without a problem. If you're somewhere like Louisiana, maybe in the hot, muggy months of the summer and it gets rained on quite a bit, it's still going to be good for, I mean, this is a tough question, I guess, because I don't know if anybody's really tested it to failure, but I've seen domes in moist climates that have gone a couple months and have had no problems. The goal, of course, is to cover it as soon as possible. But for some reason, let's say your contractor started and he got the frame up and then he broke his leg or something and he was out of commission for a few weeks and you were able to get somebody else in there to finish working on it and cover it. Those few weeks are not going to hurt that lumber at all. Of course, if you're going to do spray foam or something like that for insulation, once you do give it covered, if it has been exposed to a lot of moisture, you're going to want to allow that wood the opportunity to try to dry out before you then put some kind of a closed cell foam or something in it. But it's not going to like start to rot or lose strength for quite a while. I mean, several weeks to months will be absolutely no problem for it. So I know it's kind of a wide range. Again, it's one of those things where are you? What time of year is it? All those factors. But yeah, I've seen a lot of domes that have sat in a certain spot for a long time and you can't even tell that they're exposed to the weather or anything. So I think it'll be fine.
And there's different points at which domes are my construction might take a pause at. So for instance, you get the plywood up. How long would you say you could have the plywood on before you waterproof it with like ice and water shield or underlayment? And then there's also how long can that go before you actually put shingles on? So there's different stopping points there. But what would you say, the time you have for just like the plywood piece goes before you waterproof it?
Yeah, so again, depending on where you're at, but you can go quite a while. That's one advantage plywood has over like OSB. And again, the zip panels have their own protection when I was trying to compare those two. But plywood is pretty resilient. And we have 3/4 inch plywood, so it's real heavy duty, plywood. It's not your typical roofing is gonna be like 7/16. So it's a little thicker and more robust than your typical roofing. And again, it depends on where you're at. Ultimately, what it is the water that hurts it. So even if you got your plywood up like in Minnesota where we are right before winter and you didn't shingle all winter long and it just sat that way for some reason, come spring, it's still going to be perfectly fine. Now, if it sat all spring, you might start getting some mold a little bit that could be cleaned off with like a bleach or something. It's not going to really destroy it. It'd be quite a while before it starts to delaminate. And then at that point, if it sat exposed to the weather to the point where it delaminated, which would take quite a bit of time, then you're probably at the point where you got to make the call. Did it delaminate to the point where we got to tear it off and replace it? Or do we got to cover this thing really quickly because it's on its way out? Because once it delaminates, which just means the layers of the plywood, when the layers separates a little bit, once that happens, then moisture really starts to embed in it quickly. It's like a real quick accelerated degradation after that. So, but some people will spend 3 years building their dome and everything is fine. So like Aaron said, it's kind of what points are you at when it's just the framework, it's all open, it's breathing, it gets rained on, it dries out right away. It's not bothering anything. You could get a little warpage, but once the dome's built, it holds itself together real good. The inside 2x4s of the super strut wall the plywood that holds those might wave. So it's obviously always to your incentive to try to get things done as quick as you can and have them exposed to as little water as possible. But like the dome we were just showing you in St. Cloud, I mean, that thing must have been rained on. Well, we didn't get a lot of rain this fall, but I bet it's been rained on at least half a dozen times. And they're still, as far as I know, they haven't put roofing underlayment on or anything. And it's, now it's going to be 12 below this weekend. And, so they probably won't put roofing on it for a little while longer. So it's not a big deal typically. In a perfect world, you could somehow build all this and get it covered before it rained, but that never happens in real life. So almost every dome that's been built or every house that's been built has been rained on a few times and it doesn't bother it. So OSB is the one exception. If OSB absorbs water, it's almost like a sponge. It doesn't like to release it for a while, so it takes a lot longer to dry out. So if you got plywood, it can usually handle a lot of weather.
Okay, so try to fit in some more here. We have Celia asking, is there a way to fireproof a dome other than with concrete? Planning to build in northern Canada where concrete would be subject to freeze and thaw cycles.
Yeah, so honestly, a lot of your real good shingles now are Class A fire rated, and so are a lot of the like Ranke aluminum shakes. They're more of a premium roofing material, but they're a metal roof. If you're really concerned, the metal's gonna hold up well. It's really kind of about design, and you want to make sure that, like in that case, if you're really worried about fire, you probably don't necessarily want to go with a ventilated dome shell because you can get sparks and ash up into the dome. So you probably want to be non-ventilated, which means you have a hot roof. You're going to want underlayments that can handle high temperatures. You're going to want, but asphalt shingles and some of the stuff is going to be Class A fire rated. But if a wildfire goes through there and trees are falling on your house, it's not going to hold up. That concrete one would probably be one of the few domes that could handle quite a bit of fire. But yeah, a lot of the materials are Class A fire rated. They'll do pretty good, but yeah, they're not going to hold up completely like that concrete one would. So the Ranke would probably be the next best option, I think. The aluminum shakes. But the problem is the underlayment in those really waterproof a lot, and the underlayment after a real hot, intense fire thing would probably be damaged to the point where you may have to take off your roof and re-roof it. The dome may survive a little longer, but if falling flaming trees are coming down, it's probably gonna overwhelm it. So
Let's see. There's another question about fire here. John Marshall says, I live in a fire zone near Spokane. I would like to replace my 40-year-old cedar siding on the sidewall with the thin real rock veneer. Any thoughts on that?
yeah, that's definitely going to be an advantage regarding fire. The thin stone the veneer stone is going to buy you some time before the heat transfers through it enough to start combusting on the back side of it on the plywood. So it's going to do a lot more where the cedar will just almost instantaneously combust. So it's going to be a huge advantage over the cedar for sure. I'm sure I just imagine that stuff being real dry and it's real wood. So it's just going to ignite right away. And then that's going to be burning into your other stuff where the stone will at least resist it for a little while. So yeah, I wish, and you would imagine with all these fire problems they've had lately, there probably will be some new products that come out on the market that just can handle more. Like I say, Class A fire rating is it's not a joke, I guess, because it means it can handle quite a bit. But ultimately, if your house is in the middle of a forest fire, it's really going to take more than that to protect your house. So that's why, like a lot of these fire areas, they even will have you just remove all the trees around it. And then really what the Class A fire rating is doing is meaning when hot ash and sparks land on it, it doesn't start to combust right away. There's so many minutes before it'll start to combust and so much temperature that it can handle. And so everything's kind of like assuming that you're in a fire, but not directly, I guess, because when you're directly, it's a whole nother level of difficulty. So
let's see. We have a question here from James. If we wanted a custom design, what's the expected lead time before it's ready?
About the same. Honestly, it doesn't vary. We do charge a little bit more for a custom plan just because we do make templates for a lot of the products we build. And so if you came up with a dome that was 27 feet and 3 3/16 of an inch in diameter, which we could do, it would just mean we'd have to make some new templates. That takes a little time, and the materials to make them. So usually it's like $1,000 upcharge for a custom size. But most of our sizing is every 3 to 4 feet in diameter, so it accommodates most people. But yeah, we can do any size, absolutely no problem. If it's just real weird, there might be $1,000 upcharge if we haven't done anything of that type before. So
looks like he meant the interior design, not the dome
oh,
shell itself.
Yeah, so the design part, again, almost every plan becomes custom, and we did get a new CAD drafter that just started working with us here a couple of months ago, and he's really doing awesome. And so before he came on, we were getting pretty backed up because the demand for domes has really skyrocketed the last couple of years. So now it's hard to say because he's still new, but I'm thinking that once he's on top of things, I don't know why it should take more than a couple months for a custom set of plans. And almost all of our plans we do are 100% custom. I have yet to see, there's one person I thought of that looked at somebody else's plan and says, I don't want to change it. That's perfect. But essentially, domes are so flexible in the design because you don't have those interior walls that have to hold up the roof and stuff. So you can really kind of do anything with a dome. So almost everybody's imagination starts to go with them. So look at a pre-existing plan and say, oh, I like that, but I want a bigger pantry. I want to move the stair here. I want to do this, this, this. It becomes a custom plan. So right now we're backlogged a little bit still. So if you were to start this process tomorrow, it'd probably be 4 months or so before we even got some preliminary plans to you. But as we're getting caught up with our new CAD drafter now, I'm hoping that drops down to a couple months, moving forward. So.
Let's see. I think we had a question that came direct to me from Ron, but he joined late. He said, "I'm trying to get some clarification on what his questions were. If he,
For Ron,
yeah, if he wants to ask any here. He
yeah.
mentioned something about a cupola and like about adding a cupola and about the cupola floor, but also mentioned that he used house wrap on his triangles. As as like a waterproofing sort of thing. I think as a temporary fix, perhaps, right?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Just to protect
Yeah. And
elements.
that's a nice thing is you can do like underlayments, which is more specific for roofing, where a house wrap is more specific for siding. But like, let's say you got your dome up, and again, we are talking about trying to race the weather. If you get it covered with the roofing underlayment and you do it correctly, your dome is now waterproof. So now none of your material is getting damaged. You can work over the winter. You can do all this stuff even before shingles, and a lot of people do. Um, the underlayments are so nice compared to like the tar paper of the old days, where sometimes a strong wind would rip it. Now you lost all your waterproofing. People would put staples in it, and the hammer tackers would puncture little like divots and dents and holes into the tar paper. Now with button cap nails, you put that underlayment on, and typically everybody, almost all manufacturers, warranty their underlayment for 6 months with no roofing on it. And we jokingly say we tested some ice and water here that we had for, was it 7 years or 8 years? And it was still fine, never leaked. Not that you should do that. It starts to degrade in the UV light. But yeah, so that's another thing, and it doesn't take that long. You can usually cover a dome in a couple of days with house wrap on the vertical walls and roofing underlayment on the roofs. And then you're basically weathered in. So a lot of people this year, for instance, have gotten to that point and they're going to leave it that way all winter, but they're going to continue to work in the house. And then in the spring, they're going to shingle it. So yeah, definitely the house wraps and the underlayments are phenomenal now for kind of giving you that time you might need to get all that other stuff done.
Uh,
So
so we have a quick question here from David. Is a vent cupola required if not doing a view cupola?
it is not, no. So, and the vent cupola's function is to have a ventilated dome shell. So depending on where you live and what kind of insulation you do will dictate whether or not you want a vent cupola. It is not mandatory. It is mandatory if you want a ventilated dome though. So if you're going to do spray foam and have a hot roof, they call it, then you would not need the ventilated dome up there. Sometimes what we'll do is when you get up to the curvature of the dome, depending on the frequency of the dome, when you get to the top, you don't have the 412 pitch that a lot of roofing companies require to warranty their shingles. And so we'll modify the very top Pentagon struts just to angle it up a little bit. You don't even really ever see it from the ground, just to give you a 412 pitch, but you don't need like a whole cupola up there or anything. But if you want it ventilated, then it draws air in the bottom of your dome, and the air comes underneath your plywood to the top of the dome and it vents out. And that can be accomplished with a view cupola, which means it's the one with the windows, or a vent cupola, which just looks like a little cap on the dome. And that is sometimes the best option for insulation. You might want a ventilated dome shell. And ventilation does help you a lot if there's any problems with the roof. So like a spray foam dome system, the foam is such a great insulator, but you don't get that forgiveness of air circulation drying things out. So if moisture gets in for some reason, and the foam, usually you want to do closed cell foam almost in all situations. The closed cell foam won't let it dry out very good. So it just depends on your insulation style. But yeah, you don't have to have it. It's not mandatory. And if you just want a ventilation, instead of having the windows up there, you can just put in some operable skylights up in the upper part of the dome that will allow you to open a lower window and get a nice, interior air flow through there, bring fresh air in from outside. If that was your goal, you can do that with a couple of operable skylights versus like a whole cupola, for instance. So they are cool though. So, if you like them and you put a floor in there, you like that. It's a kind of a cool feature, but definitely not mandatory.
Yep. Yep. The quick comment from Ron again was that the ice and water shield, when he was thinking of doing it, it was below 40 degrees, so it's not warranted to properly adhere at those temperatures.
Right.
So that's why he just used a temporary solution of house wrap, like not like a permanent thing. But so yeah, that sounds like a decent option.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if it's temporary, house wraps and roofing underlayments are very similar. Some house wrap, you got to be careful though, because there are some house wraps that if you were to lay it flat and pour water on it, it would drip through. But the good ones are usually going to be just like a roofing underlayment where they're going to be watertight. But some of those roofing underlayments are not very expensive. I want to say it's maybe a couple $100 for a roll that will cover 1,000 square feet. So if your dome is 2,000 or 3,000 square feet, maybe it costs just $700 worth of underlayment to get it on there. Of course, if you're doing that now, it's a permanent underlayment. But if your goal was to use ice and water, and this is temporary, it's a $700 temporary option. Now, what some people have done with the ice and water, and it's not warranted from the manufacturers, is they'll use buttonells, because ice and water, typically for those of you that are not familiar with it, it's a self-adhering membrane. So when you put it down on whatever you're touching it to, it sticks to it, and it's really hard to remove. And that's part of how it accomplishes what it does. And then when you drive nails through it, it seals up around the nail. So you could have 10,000 nails in your roof and pull off all the shingles, it still won't leak a drop of water through your ice and water. But for them to stand behind that, if it's 10 below zero and you put it on, it's not sticking to anything. You got to use cap nails to hold it in place. And then when it warms up in the summer and the sun hits your shingles and it gets hot, it will get warm and it can stick, but it may not be perfectly flat. You may end up with wrinkles in it or different things. So that's why they don't like to warranty it under those conditions. So, I mean, people have done it and continue to do it, but it's less than ideal. So, good to follow the manufacturer's recommendations whenever available.
Cool, Matt. Thanks, Ron, for your comments and questions. Yeah, I think that's all we have for today. We successfully made it over an hour as we like to do.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thanks for helping everybody with those questions. And if anybody's got more, we're not trying to end it necessarily, but it was nice to, we got through those first 8 so quick. It was like, wow. So, yeah.
Well, that's it. So I guess, yeah, thanks everyone for coming to this month's Dome Talk. We'll be doing it again in the third, the 20th. That's on the website. I just put it up there a few days ago. Like the third Tuesday of the month, I think is what it usually is.
Yeah, I think that's what we switched it to.
Okay, so it's next one's February 27th. So we're a little bit over a month on this one before the next one. So plenty of times to get your questions in line and get submitted for the next one.
Yeah, we kind of rushed it today, getting up a few pictures of that dome raising, but we'll try to get some fun things on there too that maybe aren't necessarily related 100% to the questions, but just might be answers nonetheless to other questions that people might be wondering about. So we'll try to get some fun stuff on there for a few minutes every time. So, but all right, well, thank you for coming, everybody, and saw a lot of familiar people. It's always good to see people coming back. So I appreciate it.
Cool. See everyone. We'll have this posted in a few days, by the way, onto YouTube in case you ever want to go back to it and show other people.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Bye.